Hi everyone, thanks for being here. Today we're going to talk about climate change in a very new way. We're going to talk about the climate change crisis as a good thing. Here are some of the key themes. We've got 5 parts here, starting with basics on the climate crisis urgency, followed by the historically unique opportunity in that crisis, followed by the importance and key role played by the Green New Deal. After that, we focus on revolutionary new technologies that only a small number of people know about. And then finally, there's the call to action. We start with climate urgency, and many of you already know about the IPCC, or Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and the sobering report they came out with 2 years ago. The essence of what they said is that we've only got 10 years to fix the climate crisis. We've been spinning our wheels about this now for over 30 years. It's time to act. Even the people who supposedly know about the seriousness of climate change often don't seem to take seriously this new short time frame. Here's an example of the urgency: the combustion engine dilemma. This includes internal combustion engines, cars, trucks, buses, trains, etc., and external combustion engines such as power plants and heating applications. The number of combustion engines is going to continue rising through the next 10 years, regardless of what we do with electric vehicles. A lot of climate activists seem to think we have 30 years to work things out. We don't. Like it or not, we're now facing some hard deadlines and critical limits just ahead. The IPCC maximum amount of atmospheric carbon before a tipping point occurs is shown here, along with the 2030 IPCC deadline to fix this dilemma. The sloping line heading up to and past the tipping point threshold shows that electric vehicles are not going to solve the problem by 2030, not even close. The EV solution is too little, too late. The 2030 intersection is when climate catastrophe triggers occur unless we overcome economic dependence on burning carbon. Now, I'm not going to dwell on this too much, but the point is, we're not just now talking about the polar bears or building a few levees or moving some people to higher ground. We're talking about, within our lifetime, historically unprecedented catastrophe that could easily lead to nuclear war. It could also cause runaway methane release from the ocean and melting permafrost that basically turns our air into poison. Signs of this have already started in some places. Needless to say, it's a very ominous situation. On the other hand, maybe the climate crisis is the kick in the butt we need to rally together, turn things around, and accomplish great things never before seen in human history. Maybe it's a blessing in disguise. Here's what that could look like on the historical timeline. You can see pollution levels growing higher and higher through the Industrial Revolution until right here. Then there's a sudden tipping point to things getting better. The signs are all here now that something special is happening. This tipping point thing was written about by a best-selling book 20 years ago by Malcolm Gladwell. Among other things, it describes how the key events leading up to a tipping point are typically behind the scenes and unnoticed, until they build up to a critical mass. Sometimes it's the case that things have to get worse before they get better. For those of you who remember, 52 years ago there was a movie all about tipping points. Many film critics have called 2001: A Space Odyssey the greatest sci-fi movie of all time. To my mind, it's maybe the greatest film of all time just because of the gravity of its subject matter. It started out with a bunch of cavemen encountering a strange black object, the monolith, which was essentially God. By touching it, one of the ape men is inspired to create the first tool, a bone he can use for fighting. The movie then switches forward 4 million years to a time in the future when we have advanced tools such as spaceships. There's a beautiful sequence where the spaceships are poetically moving to the music of the Blue Danube Waltz. The main characters in the movie were, first, a spaceship that looks like a spermatozoa. Second, Hal, the computer, that basically has more personality than any of the humans in the movie. And then finally Dave, the astronaut who personally experiences the paradigm shift tipping point transformation that is about to occur. When the spaceship encounters the mysterious black monolith, the same one the caveman encountered, floating out in space near the planet Jupiter, the transformation begins, and it's scary. After the famously trippy and exhausting light show experience, Dave ends up as an old man in a bed in his strange Victorian room face to face with the monolith. Astronaut Dave is now experiencing the death of an old paradigm, right before the birth of a new one. Many people who saw the movie back then were confused about its ending. They didn't understand who or what the Star Child was. But I consider it a tribute to the director Stanley Kubrick that he didn't compromise to popular taste and spell it out. He left it for people to think about and figure it out on their own. The thing I've wondered about was, how would this paradigm shift thing play out down on the surface of the planet? How would everyday life change? Perhaps the first thing noticed might be the beginnings, for the first time, of a global yin-yang balance. Instead of what could be seen as the chronic yang overload that we've had throughout our history with our wars and selfishness. Perhaps this all might begin with women taking more leading roles within the key initiatives that are now emerging. The Green New Deal is certainly one of those initiatives. Growing numbers of people are now striking and marching and speaking out angrily about the climate crisis all over the world. It's encouraging, but something's missing. We keep talking about change, but we still don't do anything tangible. We simply keep talking and striking and having conferences. What exactly should we do now? There are two excellent books addressing this issue. Both came out a couple of years ago. The first is by Naomi Klein, and it focuses on the issue of whether effective climate solutions are compatible with free market capitalism. One of the chapters in the book is called "The Right is Right," where she argues that right-wing conservatives are actually correct in thinking that climate solution activism is a threat to the unregulated capitalism that they prefer, and that the liberal left is being naive to think otherwise. She argues that so-called green capitalism doesn't seem to work, and that contrary to our hopes, green billionaires won't save us. So far, she's right. But with a new technology breakthrough, we hope to change that. The other book is a systematic compendium of climate solutions, each systematically rated with regard to how much carbon it is potentially capable of pulling down from the atmosphere. A key theme in the book is that there are no magic bullets, that it's going to take many solutions. What it doesn't address is the possibility that there's a singular holistic strategy that incorporates multiple solutions, as is shown here, such as is the case with the new technology I'm now going to tell you about. Just so you know, there have been plenty of magic bullets in the history. For this and other reasons, I've come now to regard this tendency for people to say there are no magic bullets with regard to energy or climate change as basically a cop-out, a stall tactic to avoid commitment to action. This is especially true since there now seems to be a technology that could single-handedly spearhead the needed change. Whether you want to call it a magic bullet is up to you, but here's something uniquely hopeful that for some very good reasons you probably haven't heard about yet. This is version number 8 of a 10-minute crash course video I did a few years ago. There's something new on the renewable energy front, something you probably haven't heard of, and something under the radar. Most importantly, it's something that could potentially solve huge problems, including perhaps even the biggest of all problems, climate change. This new thing is called Metrol. It's a clean and green, affordable, and easy to obtain, easy to use liquid transportation fuel based on hydrogen with the unmatched potential to quickly and completely replace all forms of fossil fuel. To understand the full importance of Metrol requires that we face up to what it would take to actually solve climate change. It's basically two tasks. First, we need to stop emitting industrial carbon gases into the atmosphere. Second, we need to remove already existing carbon gases in significant amounts from the atmosphere. Amazingly, Metrol can do both. We also have to find a way to stop polluting our landscapes and oceans with our waste. Metrol can do this too. The full list of benefits for the Metrol technology system would seem to make it the proverbial no-brainer. The Metrol program was developed by an Arizona research group known as McAllister Technologies. The company's director, Roy McAllister, a professional engineer with over 250 patents in renewable energy, founded the American Hydrogen Association, wrote a book called The Solar Hydrogen Civilization, has taught in the engineering departments at University of Kansas and Arizona State University, and has received awards from prominent professional engineering societies for innovations in green energy.
We use a relatively small amount of electricity to ionize a portion of the population of injected fuel so that these ions carry on the ignition. These ions go where the fuel goes. And so we're, in that sense, extremely efficient. And the way we present the fuel then is as a stratified charge.
Metrol is made from anything that rots or burns. This typically means biomass waste, such as sewage, garbage, farm waste, or forest waste. Metrol could also be made from fossil fuel. When made from biomass, an anaerobic digester is used to extract from it the methane gas. Then, and unlike other biofuels which typically just use the methane as a fuel, Metrol production takes it a step further by splitting the methane into its constituent parts, hydrogen and carbon. The solid carbon is collected and then sold to industry as a manufacturing resource. The hydrogen gas is collected and, by use of a patented process, combined with nitrogen and carbon dioxide drawn from the atmosphere to form a three-element liquid fuel, Metrol. Because it's a liquid at room temperature and pressure, it's as easy to store and transport as gasoline, diesel, or jet fuel. This means we don't have to build massive new infrastructure to handle the hydrogen-based fuel. It can use existing pipelines, rail cars, tanker trucks, and gas stations, thus saving huge amounts of money. Once the liquid Metrol is inside a converted car, truck, or literally any other type of motor vehicle with an internal combustion engine, it's stored in a standard fuel tank. Next, and using patented McAllister technology, the Metrol is heated and pressurized using recycled waste heat from the combustion chamber. The hydrogen is then separated out from the Metrol and cleanly burned. The leftover carbon and nitrogen are released back to the atmosphere from which they were earlier drawn during the making of the Metrol. Converting a normal car engine to Metrol use typically takes about the same amount of time as a standard tune-up. The existing exhaust system is replaced by the Metrol heat exchanger. The hydrogen accumulator is mounted nearby on the firewall, and the new smart plugs simply replace the old spark plugs. In many ways, Metrol cars and trucks are the greenest of all road vehicles. To understand why, we start with the most immediate, easy-to-see factors. First up, Metrol vehicles are obviously cleaner than those running on either gasoline or diesel, and this is by a huge margin. Besides no toxic tailpipe emissions, as we'll see, they actually clean the air. Metrol fuels are also easier on the engine than is gasoline or diesel fuel, so the vehicle engines last longer. Metrol cars are cleaner than other biofuel cars because they burn only hydrogen, not the carbon that's in methane or biodiesel. Metrol cars are cleaner than typical electric cars because they don't depend on either the grid, which is mostly fossil fuel powered, or on toxic batteries. Metrol cars have multi-fuel flexibility. They can run on either Metrol or, if necessary, gasoline or diesel with the flip of a switch. Metrol cars have lower costs overall compared to other green car types and compared sometimes even to gasoline cars. This is for two important reasons. First, converting existing cars to Metrol is much cheaper than buying a new car. Second, implementing the Metrol infrastructure is much cheaper than all the other energy alternatives. There are bigger issues that make Metrol even more attractive. For example, Metrol burning engines actually suck in and remove contaminants from the intake air. This means a Metrol vehicle actually cleans the air that it drives through. With Metrol use replacing fossil fuels in cars, trucks, and power plants, we could virtually eliminate smog from the cities of the world. Even more important, Metrol production from biomass could enable the world's green plants to remove excess CO2 from the atmosphere. This is because biomass is made from photosynthesis, and photosynthesis naturally captures carbon from the air and puts it into plants. When animals or plants die, that biomass normally either rots or burns, thus returning the captured carbon back to the atmosphere. But because the Metrol system interrupts the rotting or burning of biomass, it prevents some captured carbon from returning to the atmosphere. This carbon is instead separated out from the biomass, stockpiled, and sold to manufacturing industries to make durable goods. This essentially locks the carbon in a place where it does no harm. The net effect of this process could be huge, enough for existing green plants to significantly lower and restabilize atmospheric CO2 levels. It's been calculated that we could potentially lower worldwide CO2 parts per million counts to safe levels within 20 years. One final Metrol benefit is to dispose of our waste products in a non-polluting way. Our garbage, sewage, and farm waste, etc., thereby become valuable resources instead of pollution headaches. The key to the affordability of Metrol comes from the captured carbon sold by the pound to industry as a manufacturing resource. The income potential of this is shown here, where we can see that a given amount of natural gas or methane yields 14 times as much income when made into Metrol than when simply sold or burned as we do now. This income from carbon sales can be used to subsidize both the cost of engine conversions and the per gallon cost of Metrol at the pump. The captured carbon sold to industry makes possible widespread use of a growing new class of wonder materials, such as carbon fiber, graphene, and carbon nanotubes. The superior quality goods produced include car bodies, bicycles, airplanes, and space vehicles, and to a new generation of much more efficient wind turbines and solar panels. This last point greatly amplifies the indirect capacity of Metrol to supply clean energy for the world. Right now, there are working prototypes for both the Metrol production equipment and the engine conversion kit that need to be advanced into production prototypes. With seed money, the next key step will be intensive third-party testing and certification to validate the reliability of the Metrol technology. This will be followed by ramp-up of production capacity to first-stage commercialization, which will take place in a few pilot programs around the country. Finally, with press coverage, word of mouth, and public demand, full-scale implementation of Metrol can begin, and the environmental plus economic benefits to motorists, travelers, and the energy-using public in general, along with virtually all other life on Earth, would be almost immediate. It all depends on the public and political will to step up to the plate and actually solve the key problems of our time. Like I said, this was 2 years ago, and I'm now working on version number 9. Several things have happened since then. Okay, so as you can see, this technology has multiple benefits, most of which are listed here. Perhaps the most unique benefit is the fact that, thanks to Metrol, and unlike what Naomi Klein says, there can be green capitalism that works. Because with robust carbon fiber sales, there can be a way to have profit-motivated climate restoration. What this means is that if it's true that there's lots of money to be made here, Metrol technology will spread rapidly across the world. So you won't be surprised to hear that the typical response to this video has been, "Oh, it sounds too good to be true, but what's the catch?" Well, what does catch really mean? For most people, it means A, does Metrol really work? And B, why haven't I heard about it somewhere? Why isn't it on the news? On this issue, I've got 2 words for you. Disruptive technology. You've got to understand that in today's world, when someone comes up with a technology that threatens the dominance of the status quo, in this case the fossil fuel industry, there are going to be barriers to launching it. It shouldn't take a stretch of imagination to realize this. I won't bore you with the details, but with Metrol technology, there has been industrial espionage, sabotage, patent infringement litigation. Thankfully, the lawsuits are mostly now concluded and we're ready to move forward. The next question that comes up, is there a singular product that can be quickly brought to market that can generate high return on investment? And the answer is yes, it's the hydrocarbon splitter. Its first iteration would be a large industrial scale unit, as shown here. Later, it could be made smaller. This could be built in a year and would provide both low-cost hydrogen and uniquely low-cost carbon fiber for sale. This is a unique machine that could single-handedly finance climate restoration. This is the machine that could make Naomi Klein change her views about green capitalism. For the hydrocarbon splitter, we've now got two projects. The first is aimed at San Francisco Bay's Alameda Island at the former Naval Air Station. The idea here is to build a hydrocarbon splitter as part of a World Climate Technology Center, where climate solution inventions from all over the world can be showcased to both investors and the public. A key feature with this plan is its unique location at the epicenter of a region famous for technology development, plus environmental and political activism, plus progressive cultural values. The site itself played a major role in World War II and is thus a perfect launch pad for the war on climate. The aircraft carrier USS Hornet is a potent symbol for what some call World War II adrenaline and is therefore well suited to be a centerpiece. Our other projects take place on an Indian reservation where they just shut down one of the largest coal-fired power plants in the United States that has left over 3,000 without jobs. Our plan is to convert this into a zero-emission Metrol hydrogen power plant that not only replaces the jobs, but becomes both a large revenue source for the tribes and a giant air cleaning device. Key themes here are both an acknowledgement of the eco-spiritual wisdom that has been an important part of Native American tradition for centuries, plus it's a form of remediation to Native America for injustices done them in the past. There's another piece to the climate change solution puzzle that's worth mentioning here. It's touched upon in Jeremy Rifkin's excellent new book and is summarized with one key phrase: the commons. The fact that he brings up this factor is one of the strengths of the book. The fact that he leaves out one of the critical components of the commons is one of its weaknesses. The important component of the commons that he leaves out is the role played by railways, especially passenger trains, in the Green New Deal. Several years ago, I wrote a book about the critical importance of new paradigm railways with zero emissions as a way to offset excessive numbers of cars in the world. This particular project is called SunTrain. It's a solar hydrogen-powered train providing service to California so thorough that car ownership becomes basically optional, and traffic congestion becomes a thing of the past. We're talking here about comfortable and uniquely flexible railway vehicles that can be strung together in long trains that go up to 160 miles an hour, or alternatively, could function as short trains for remote locations. These are photo simulations that I did to depict different aspects of SunTrain service in California as a model for the whole world to follow. We see high-speed travel, solar panels on railway ties, optimized social and sightseeing space, and a full-service railway station with digital synchronized shuttle bus service providing door-to-door service. Here on the top we see SunTrain at Donner Pass and Emerald Bay in the Lake Tahoe area. Below is SunTrain in the streets of San Francisco. Besides building new routes and co-opting rail lines all over the state, SunTrain would take over all other transit districts in the state. This is another example of a climate solution infrastructure project that would create lots of jobs and make money. So I'm going to conclude with a call to action, which is summarized here. The first two items are obvious. They relate to who you vote for and what you buy. The next three are more personal. We badly need to start bridging the great political divide that has taken hold in our country. We need to start becoming very skilled communicators. Here's our primary challenge. We need to learn how to somehow overcome tribalism. No one said it was easy, but if we're creative, upbeat, and emotionally intelligent about it, it is doable. Thank you.